Okay guys, here's what we're going to do today, is we are going to go through photosynthesis. Alright, so before we even start, we need to do our word roots. We have photo and we have synthesis. Photo means light, and then synthesis means to make. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be able to make something out of light, which is going to be the sun, obviously. And the only organisms on this pretty little green earth of ours that can make something out of sunlight are our plants, right? And of course, plants is an easy way to say all the stuff that has green in it, which is going to be the chlorophyll, but we have two other words that actually are synonymous with plants. We can call them, we can call these producers, D-U-C-E-R-S. We can also call these autotrophs, right? Now, as far as autotrophs go, auto means self, like think of an automatic car, you don't have to shift. And then troph, T-R-O-P-H, troph means feeding. And so autotrophs are self-feeding organisms, which would be plants. Okay, now as far as photosynthesis is concerned, we need to go through a couple of things. First, the who, which we just said. Who are going to be plants, autotrophs, producers. You're going to hear all those words for the rest of the semester, for the rest of the year, actually. Where this is going to happen. This is going to happen inside a plant cell, right? And then if we daisy chain down, once you get inside your plant cell, this reaction is specifically going to happen inside your chloroplast. That's an A, our chloroplast. And then, when we talk about the chloroplast, we can actually talk about specific structures inside, because this is what your thing looks like, right? You have sunlight over here, and then you have this awesome tree, and then this tree has a leaf on it, of which we know what that looks like. And so then we take that leaf, and we blow it up, and here's your plant cell. So plant cell has a nucleus because it's a eukaryote cell. You can see the cell membrane on the inside, which is fantastic. You have your vacuole, that takes up like 80%. And then you have this football-looking guy. Okay, well that football-looking guy, that's the chloroplast that we're talking about. Okay? First things first, chloroplast has a double membrane around it, because that's indicative of a eukaryote cell, is that they have to have a double membrane. Then, when you look inside your chloroplast, you have these structures, right? Now, they look something like this. Look like lines. Each one of these lines is another structure. These structures are called thylakoids. T-H-Y-L-A-K-O-I-D. And then, when you stack a bunch of thylakoids together, these are called grana. Then, all this empty stuff here in the middle, kind of like where your cytoplasm would be in your regular cell, this is called the stroma. S-T-R-O-M-A. Okay, so that covers our where. So it happens inside my chloroplast, and now my chloroplast has two different structures inside. I have my thylakoids, which stack up into grana, and then I have stroma. The who, what, when, where, I guess, why plants are going to do this is they need to make their own food, right? Which is why we're going to call those autotrophs. And how it does it is, it's kind of nice, actually, the whole cycle of it, because you have your cute little tree, right? We already drew this, and then I think you guys have a fox, but I'm not going to draw a fox, I'm just going to draw a rabbit. So here's my cute little rabbit guy. And so you have your sunlight. Yay, look, sunlight. And of course, this plant, he's going to take in my sunlight, right? This rabbit, he's getting rid of CO2 because of cell respiration. So there's my CO2. The plant's going to take in CO2. And then let's just make some clouds over here. And it starts to rain. Now I have water. And then my plant can take up water. When he has those three things, CO2, sunlight, and water, now he can go through photosynthesis. And he can make his sugar. While he goes through photosynthesis, he's also going to get rid of oxygen, which my bunny can take up, and then it just keeps going in a big circle. This entire process is called the carbon cycle, because I'm just recycling carbons and oxygens between all my living systems. But don't forget, plants, right? They're going to go through cell respiration too. So even if they are spitting out oxygen, they're going to take it back in. Okay, so let's go through what my equation looks like, right? Because we always have to have an equation for this. And really, our equation, if you remember what the cell respiration was, this will be really easy because it's just the opposite of what cell respiration equation is. So where cell respiration needed oxygen and sugar, that's what photosynthesis is making. And since cell respiration made H2O and CO2 as byproducts and the 36 ATP as their energy source, that's what I'm requiring for photosynthesis. So if I do my reactants, right, so here's my reactants. I need sunlight, I need water, and I need CO2. And that's going to make oxygen and my glucose, which is C6H12O6. This equation is the exact opposite of cell respiration. So if you remembered one equation, then you always know the other. You just have to flip the arrows around. So these two things right here, since I said these were my reactants, this oxygen and this C6H12O6, these are going to be my products. Now, as far as photosynthesis is concerned, so here's my photosynthesis. Just like cell respiration, it's going to have a couple different reactions. We have two different reactions for this one. First one, we'll go through all the names. This is called the light reaction, right? Besides being called the light reaction, I can also call this the light dependent reaction, because you know depend means need. So my first reaction is one that actually needs light. Then my second reaction, right, just to give myself more room, I have three different names for it. I can either call this reaction the dark reaction, which makes sense because the first one's light, so this one would be the antithesis, which is dark. I can call this the light independent reaction, N-D-P-E-N-D-E-N-T, just like the song, light independent reaction, because independent means it doesn't need. So this reaction doesn't require light. Or I can call this reaction the Calvin cycle, and that's just because of the guy who figured out how it actually worked. Okay, so let's recap what we have so far for photosynthesis before we go into our reactions. First things first, this is a plant-only process. This plant-only process goes through two, oops, that's an R, goes through two reactions. And this process happens inside my chloroplast. Chloroplast having two pieces to it. I have thylakoids, which when I stack those up are called grana. And, let's make that little star. And I have the jelly-like stuff, which is stroma, which is really, really nice actually, because when we talked about cytoplasm in organelles, we talked about it in cell respiration, where, hey, cytoplasm is the jelly stuff and chemical reactions take place. It's the same thing for the stroma. Stroma is the jelly stuff, but this is also where half of the reactions take place. Okay, so let's start going through both of these reactions. First, let's draw our chloroplast. Remember, our chloroplast has that awesome double membrane, because that's what all eukaryotes have. There you go. And then we'll draw some thylakoids in here, our grana. And then we know that the jelly stuff is the stroma. So first things first, let's go through my light reaction, all right? Light reaction has two needs. Okay, so this is a need it needs sun because it's a light reaction. We also need water for this part. So what this is going to look like is, I'll clear that really quick. So here's my chloroplast. Same picture you guys have, just want to make it a little bit cleaner. There's my thylakoids, my grana. Okay, so first things first. Here's my sunlight. Plants can't live without sunlight. You guys all know this. Now this sunlight is kind of like a physical science thing. This is going to emit tiny little packets of sunlight energy. These little packets of sunlight energy, this is called a photon. P-H-O-T-O-N. So photon is a package of sunlight. And that sunlight's going to go through all the atmosphere, yada, yada, yada. Here's my double membrane. It's going to go through all this, and it's going to enter inside my chloroplast. Once it comes inside my chloroplast, I have water sitting on top of these thylakoids, on top of this, these stacks of grana. So this sunlight's going to come in, and it's going to immediately hit this water. Well, you know that water is a compound. It's made up of 2 hydrogens and an oxygen. And so when I hit this water, it splits it apart. This oxygen right here, that comes out to us. So oxygen in this reaction is a byproduct because it's something produced but not actually used. Then these hydrogens are going to fall down the stack of thylakoids, right? Now these stack of thylakoids, what they actually act like is another electron transport chain. And so you have these hydrogens falling down. So here's hydrogens, and then I'm also going to throw electrons down the stairs, just like we did in the past. Except now we don't have oxygen to pick them up. And then sitting at the bottom of these thylakoids, right, are now my hydrogens and my electrons. I also have a bunch of ADPs. That's a D, by the way. ADP and phosphates. And I also have this new molecule. I'm going to write it down here so I have more room. I have this new molecule called NADP. NADP is just like another energy molecule. It'd be like me giving you guys, I don't know, some other foreign currency that I haven't mentioned before. So now I have these hydrogens and I have these electrons. What they're going to do is they're going to start creating energy molecules. So you know that I use my electrons here. I'll have my ADPs, right? Remember, this is all happening at the bottom of my thylakoids. I have my ADPs. I'm going to use my electron, add a phosphate, and now I get to make ATP. Then same thing, I have these electrons, so I'm going to add this NADP plus electrons plus the hydrogens from my water, and now I get to make NADPH. Okay, so just to recap, this is my light reaction. I have sunlight. Sunlight emits a photon. That photon travels through the atmosphere, and it comes and it hits a leaf. It goes inside there. Once it hits this, it breaks my water apart. Oxygen comes out to us. So now every time you guys breathe, you're actually breathing apart, broken apart water. Then these hydrogens go down the electron transport chain, and I lose my electrons. And because both of those are available, I make ATP, that's a T, ATP and NADPH, right? So my needs for light reaction were sun and water. What I'm going to make during this reaction is ATP and NADPH. I'm going to use both of those to fuel the dark reactions. Okay, so same picture, but I just wanted to clean it up. So now let's do the dark reaction. In the dark reaction, the only reactant I had left was CO2. So let's just make, here's a cute little guy out here. Yay, he's so happy. And then, since he's going through cell respiration, here's his CO2. So sitting at the bottom of these thylakoids, after all that whole reaction, sunlight breaking apart water, and now I get to make ATPs and NADPH. Those little molecules are going to get shuttled over here inside my stroma. Remember, stroma was all the jelly stuff inside my chloroplast. And this CO2, he's going to enter my chloroplast. So now I have ATP sitting over here. I have NADPHs sitting over here. I have CO2. And then I also have this other dude, this 5-carbon molecule. Don't worry about where he came from. Just acknowledge that he's sitting there. And so now I have these energy molecules, 5-carbon molecule, and this CO2. What these ATPs and the NADPHs are going to do is they're going to break apart. And you know, every time that we break apart an energy molecule, it releases energy. Well, the energy is going to be used to force this 5-carbon molecule and the CO2 together. When you force that 5-carbon molecule together with CO2, you get to make C6H12O6. So to recap, here's my dark reaction. Dark reaction. What I need for this one is CO2. Remember, that's going to come in here. CO2. I have ATPs, NADPHs. Then I have this other 5-carbon molecule. It's going to force everything together. And what I get to make is C6H12O6, which is glucose. So now, inside this pretty little plant cell, I just made glucose. So here's my C6H12O6, but that's like you guys making a sandwich and then not do anything with it. Once you make your sandwich, you're going to eat that sucker. So I take that C6H12O6 and I move it in my cell to our familiar friend over here, the mighty mitochondria with the double membrane. So see, look, so now I have, hey, my C6H12O6, and all of this area out here is my cytoplasm. So now I can take this C6H12O6 and I can start breaking it apart out here, because this will be glycolysis. Right now spelled somehow in there. And then once glycolysis is over, then I can do parts 2 and 3. I can do my Krebs. I can do my electron transport chain. So that way my plant can make his 36 ATP. Because don't forget, plants, these are the really, really special creatures. They're going to do both, that's like a huge test question right there, both photosynthesis and cell respiration. There you go, it's in there somewhere. Cell respiration. I do photosynthesis to make my glucose, and then I take that glucose and do cell respiration to make energy, ENERGY, which is analogous to my ATP. Okay, so recap time. Here's photosynthesis. Happens inside my plant. Inside my plant, specifically, it's the chloroplast. Once I have my chloroplast, I have the 2 reactions inside. I have the light reaction. I have the dark reaction. Both of those together, because light reaction needed sun, needed water, dark reaction needed CO2. When I mix those 3 things together, and the ATPs and the NADPHs I made, I get to make C6H12O6, which is glucose. And then I take that pretty glucose, I'm going to shove it to the cytoplasm mitochondria bit, so I can go through aerobic respiration to make my 36 ATP. peas. So then just to show you again, here's my cute little plant, right? Of course, you know, there's more plants out in life than trees, but that's what I like to draw apparently. So inside here, I do photosynthesis, and I get to make oxygen and glucose. Oxygen comes out, but then, because of cell respiration, my plant can take it right back in. And it's the same thing here. Cell respiration is making is making CO2. CO2 comes right back in for photosynthesis. So trees, plants, these are self-sustaining creatures. They don't need us, right? We need them, though, because we don't have a way to produce oxygen. But I mean, that's it for photosynthesis. Say, if you guys understand cell respiration, this should be pretty quick because, I mean, you're pretty much going through the same exact type of reaction, just with different reactants, different products.